Go.
Welcome to the Hog Market Talk podcast, your weekly deep dive into hog market fundamentals, breaking news, and industry insights. Trading commodity futures and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors.
All right, thanks for tuning in again today. Reminder, click the link in the description to sign up for any of our daily market commentary, get fast insights into the ag markets and more. Also, check out our website at professionalagmarketing.com. Jeff, I got you here today. We're going to talk about the hog market. Some interesting futures activity here lately. What do you got to say about that?
Well, I've been really impressed here the past few days. I think most people have been, but we can dive into the technical side of the things here in a minute. But that was definitely a portion of our issue last 10 days or so, right? As we continued to pound on the technical side of the thing last week, and then in my mind, Mike, I value your opinion on the subject too, but in my mind, we were able to put in a pretty big low last Friday. Had that June market push all the way down towards $100. Started the week here on Monday with quite a bit higher low, and a higher lower than the previous day close. So I think a lot of things kind of helped out as far as making that chart look quite a bit better. And what I thought was really impressive, and I think the market had to pull back a little bit today because of this on the front end at least, is that big gap open that we saw yesterday morning, Tuesday morning. Really the only excuse I could come up with that is maybe the charts were starting to heal up a little bit. Then obviously we had that higher product value there come out Monday night. But $1.50 higher off not really a lot of information, Mike. That's pretty impressive. To me, that's a signal some money wants to come into this marketplace yet.
Seems like that money didn't want to go into the June month today specifically. Like we mentioned there, that was still down $0.50, but that did have a really nice gap open there still Monday, but or Tuesday. But the back months, a lot more friendly here today. Front month, June, down $0.50. The back months, so those are up over $1 in a lot of those. So what's going on spread-wise? Like, what's that telling us about front-end fundamentals? Are there a lot of pigs still? Versus what do we think going further out here? Because they obviously want to help buy some pigs at these levels, it sure looks like.
I think it's a combination of some pretty important developments here. One from a fundamental standpoint, and let's think about that here for a moment. So, we do have plenty of hogs around right here for the moment, and got an index that probably will start to rally some, but it's been flat forever. Product values that have been relatively flat since back into February, but this most recent activity as far as the cutout goes, we'll start bringing up the index some. We think that'll for sure get over $92, maybe creep it on 93 even. So that starts to put things like, May pretty close to where the current fundamentals are at, but June still holding, a pretty large premium to the nearby fundamentals, but not inconsistent with history, I guess is the way I would describe that, Mike. So I'm not suggesting June has a ton of extra premium in it, but it still has that premium to the nearby futures. And that's when I look at yesterday's activity with that big bump higher, being so impressive that just pulled away from the nearby stuff in a big way. And so what you're seeing is that June market having to come a little bit closer to reality here in my mind. And I think you're also looking at the nearby fundamentals, right? Like the supply side of this thing, we're not quite out of the woods yet. We put together a little over a 2.5 million kill last week. This week and potentially next week, talking like a 247, 248. So that's a pretty big week as you start to stare at the 1st of May. That's going to be hitting on all cylinders on a 5-day week basically. Maybe a little bit going through the system on Saturday too as far as hog numbers go. So that is a a little scary. They are carrying some extra weight yet. We've trimmed that back a little bit week over week, but in my mind, not as much as what I'd like to see for the size of the harvest that we're seeing on a weekly basis here. So, I think the front end fundamentals, especially on, as it concerns to the June futures, we had to give that some respect today. That's why you had to be down, a third of what you put on yesterday. You still do have a gap on the chart if you want to talk about technicals again. I gotta kind of believe that's one of those gaps that are going to want to be filled in the coming days, so don't be surprised if that happens. But then let's talk about those more deferred months. The fact that we were able to put $1 on October, put $1 on December, are pretty close to $1 higher on next February, guys. That's a big deal. In my mind, that's another signal of some money wanting to come in this marketplace. So you had big gap open yesterday. You had the back months. Anytime you can put $1 on an extreme deferred market like we did on the February today, you have to say there's some pretty big money that's coming into the marketplace. And that's really good news. They're going to need to follow it up with some fundamentals, of course, but that's really encouraging for a hedger to see if we can attract the big money back into this marketplace. It looks like they're willing to push further back into the futures curve, giving us those opportunities that we're really looking for.
Yeah, we piled on quite a few red days there, all the way from the 8th of April, really lower, especially in those deferred months. We hadn't seen the green day for quite some time, really, until the past 2 days here, so that's been nice to see.
And kind of destroyed any technical indicator on the way down.
Yep.
Especially on the front month of June, right?
Didn't seem to blink on the way down, and then for us to gap over top of that 200-day was a very impressive move. So a little bit overdone technically. Got some buying going on in those back months. We'll see what happens with front end fundamentals, if we can stop killing so many hogs and get into a few less of those, and hopefully cutout here will do its normal seasonal thing, right, and start to take off sometime in May to help out that June contract a little bit more than what just a normal relationship would be at some point there, to get excited about that and the front end fundamentals. What else do you got for the hog market here with some of the trade recently?
Yeah, I think if you focus on the cutout here for a moment, yeah, I think we'll see some higher markets as we get into May. We should see some lower supply. That all should work well for the picture of this hog market, Mike. The remaining question, of course, is are we going to end up with an index that goes up, up over 102, 103 in the June? It's still going to be a little bit of a push to get there that quickly. Time just kind of gets on the wrong side here. But, this time of year, if things start going the right direction, they can go pretty fast too, as far as front end fundamentals go here. So we're not losing a lot of sleep over that. As we break down the primals, there's a few things that we're watching this week inside of the cutout, Mike. The one is the ham market. We were able to push that ham market up over 90 cents. We kind of thought it would bounce off the 70-cent area. Pushing up into this type of level is really exceeding our expectations. So that's a really excellent sign. That's part of the reason why we're able to push the product up into this $100 range again. And all must be well as far as shipments to Mexico, for an example, because we are putting some extra pounds out the door, right? So that's what makes all this kind of impressive. Some of the weakness that's come in the past week has come from the belly primal. So that is just not another thing that we're not going to spend a lot of time worrying about. We shouldn't have to be worried about the belly market as we start approaching the 1st of May. So there's a little bit of erratic trade going on there, a little bit of volatility, but you shorten this thing up and get to the right seasonal. Belly should not be what this hog market has to worry about. So I would pay attention to that going forward too. If we're lower from day to day, and it's on the product values in the afternoon report, and it's because of the bellies, I'd be discounting that. I think the trade will probably discount that as well.
That one really whips around the cutout, doesn't it? When that belly market moves, that can move the cutout quite a bit.
Yeah, and you just have some folks that need to clean up a little bit of supply here and there. We've seen that in the ham market a couple weeks ago too, but more common in the belly market. It could just be off a few loads of volume.
Yeah, and something that piqued my interest recently was that you talked about getting into a few less hogs here hopefully soon, and that helping out the meat prices. On the beef side, you've actually seen that Packers have backed down on the cattle side on numbers recently and trying to improve their margins a little bit, and it seems to be working, right? Choice cutouts heading higher, normal seasonal trend too to go along with it. So hopefully that would be a similar deal. You get into a little bit lower numbers on the pork side, and hopefully that can help out the meat price on the pork too.
It'll be the next test of the whole protein. Is protein still kind of the golden egg from a demand standpoint, right?
Mhm.
Can we push this beef market higher into May like we do pretty much every year? I think with the supplies that we're seeing today and the harvest levels being as low as they are over on the beef side, I think you will see that, but it will be another test to see what this demand picture looks like. And the pork side the same way, maybe not quite as on the edge of the spear, so to speak, but it'll be interesting to see what happens as we get into May and into the first part of June.
Very much so. Any final thoughts for our listeners this week on the hog market?
I don't think so. I guess the advice I would have is, I know folks are getting busy this time of year, but let's not kind of fall asleep at the wheel, if you will. If we're going to get some money flowing back into this marketplace, you might start seeing that June start push up towards $85 again. Or excuse me, that's December. It's currently $83.50, push up to 85. Next June is creeping over $1. So you might see that push $1 higher too all of a sudden if you get some money coming into the complex on some lower volume. So it might pay to pay attention here.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you for your time today, Jeff. Thank you everyone else for tuning in. We appreciate it.